There is a prayer I have heard quite a few times over the past years, and I think recently at Preston Trail, that says, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. And for some reason or another, what the Lord has placed on my heart and what breaks my heart are people who are miserable at work or in their jobs. And I feel a little shallow admitting that, because there's starving people in the world, and there are children who need foster care and adoption, and there's, terrible water in third world countries. Like, there's so many other larger things that you could have your heart broken for, but for some reason or another, for Heather, it's when people are absolutely miserable in their work. And so that kind of led me down this spiritual curiosity path of, well, did God design us to work? And if so, what does that look like? So I just opened up the U version, started typing in keywords like work and labor. And there was one scripture that really snowballed, that kicked all this off for me. I wanted to share it with you and get your gut reaction, and then we'll go from there. So the first piece of evidence that I came across that really ignited this personal passion research project about what the Bible says about work and the workplace is Psalm 104. I'm just going to read a snippet. It's very long, but I'm not going to read a lot of it, which I believe it is said, or at least thought to be written by David. And the whole psalm is this hymn of praise and admiration for like God's perfect creation and the order and beauty of all of his designs. And so I'm just going to read a snippet, and then I'll cache the part that really caught me off guard. So he's listing all of the things God created and the order of them. So he says, he makes the clouds for his chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. He makes wind for his messengers. He set the earth on its foundations and covered it with watery depths as a garment. He makes springs pour water into the ravines that flow in the mountain, though they give water to all the beasts in the field. He talks about grass, like he makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for people to cultivate. He even says that, bring forth food and wine that gladdens the hearts of humans. He talks about animals, like that they're the birds that make their nests, and these high mountains belong to the goats. And then he goes into the moon and the sun. He made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to go down. You bring darkness, it becomes night. The lions roar for their prey, and the sun rises, and they steal away and return and lie down to their dens. And here's the only thing it says about humans. Then people go out to work and labor until the evening. And then right after he says, how many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you have made them all. And I'm looking at this like, what? That's the only shout out we get here in terms of his perfect order and design, is that we go out and work until the evening? So that has just started a whole list of questions that so I'm curious to get your gut reaction to that. And then maybe we just start with the big giant question was that part of our big, beautiful design, is to work?
Well, Heather, I do believe that is a part of God's design. And I did a similar thing this week in preparation for a message, and I looked up work, and the first time the word work actually appears in Scripture is in Genesis chapter 1. And it says, actually it's chapter 2, after he finishes creation, and it says, and God looked at all of his work that he had done. And it's interesting, you go back and look at that first chapter, how many times active verbs like, and he made, and he created. And so I've kind of come to the conclusion that after I say God is love, I'm also able to say God is work, because the difference between a wilderness and a civilization is work. And I think that's what David was getting at, is that everything that we experience, everything that we value, everything that we adore and love about life came about because of God's work. And if you stop and think about it, work is still incredibly prevalent in our existence. That is, we're having this conversation because somebody did some work somewhere and designed the technology and created the microphones and the internet. I have clothes on today because there was someone who did the work of tailoring. So if you start kind of working backwards, you begin to realize that everything that we love, appreciate about our very lives is present because somebody works.
I love that difference between wilderness and civilization is work.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, if you just removed all of our occupations and the need for security, it would just be, I mean, it would almost be like Neanderthal times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There would be no,
That's
it
right.
would be wild.
That's right. If everybody just stopped working, what would happen to our world?
Oh man,
Right.
it would shut down.
Yeah. And we're concerned about if the internet stops working. But if
Oh,
humans stopped working, we would really be in a bad place.
so God worked,
Yes.
he made, he created,
Right.
and he, part of that work was creating us
Yes.
so that we could work.
So now if we are created in his image,
Mm-hmm.
and in the creation story, he invites men and women to co-create with him, be fruitful and multiply,
Mm-hmm.
and then subdue all the birds of the air and the animals on the earth and the fish in the sea. And then in chapter 2 of Genesis, he tells Adam and the creation of Adam, he says he puts him in the garden. Well, first of all, God creates a garden. God works and makes a garden. And he puts Adam in the garden and says, now I want you to care for and to tend the garden. So a part of Adam's existence, his reason for being, is now to tend the garden, to protect it, to cultivate it, to make it thrive. And that's what he was called to do. So I do believe that this whole idea of work is deeply embedded in creation.
Where do you think the jump was? Because some people could listen to that and say, okay, well, I get it. I'm created to tend to the earth and to care for the plants. And like, it's not actually about going into an office and filing that report and, you know, doing all the work things. Like it's about the earth and his creation. Like, where is the jump from to ruling over creation and subduing the earth and tending to the garden to an occupation?
So in creation in Genesis 4, God starts kind of laying out all the different generations. And later on, it talks about Lamech, who married two women, and he had Adah and a brother Zillah, and they gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. And his brother's name was Jabal, who was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. And Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. So here in Genesis 4, you already have a listing of different occupations that people were performing in order to make the world work. So it didn't take long at all for that to actually develop in the creation story.
It's interesting too. There's the strings, the instrument one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really all of those you could use as an example, but that does also start to illustrate the tie between someone's occupation and a spiritual gift.
Mm-hmm.
And when those things are working together, it's serving his greater purpose for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So very early on, you know, God understands, and I think the general call to Adam is a call to each one of us, is to co-create, to steward what is here, and to help make human community thrive. And so there are numerous occupations or things to do in order to accomplish that purpose that I think God gives to all of us in creation.
It's reminding me of it. Now it's my turn. I'm going to blip on the Oh, it's one of the books with Ian in the back, like Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians. I think it's one of those.
I like
Which
that.
there, by the way, in all of those books, there's so much about work.
Yes.
It says something about spiritual gifts and that like using those for good works was, and it says something like if your gift is prophecy, go out and prophesy. If it's to
Yeah.
teach, then teach. If it's to if oh gosh, if it's to cook, then cook. If it's to it's going on, and it lists
Right.
these really specific. It doesn't say cook, by the way. That was a
No.
reach. But
I think you're talking about 1 Corinthians 12, and it lays out a number of gifts. Also in Romans 12, there's a list of the gifts. But I think it's 1 Corinthians 12:7, where it says that the Spirit gives gifts to all people for the common good. And I believe that is the primary motivation that God gave human beings behind this idea of work, so that we are working not just for self-advancement, but we're also working for the common good of the human community.
and that's part of tending to
Yes.
his
Mhm.
creation, not
That's right.
just the physical
Yeah,
mountains and the land. And
that's right.
what do you think is the difference between a calling, a vocation, and like an occupation or a job?
That's a great question. I would say that probably the idea of calling and vocation are synonymous. The Latin word vocare, from which we get the word vocation, literally means to call. So when we use the word vocation, we're saying that is relating or referring to something that we feel called to do. Uh, Many times people use the word occupation as the particular instrument or opportunity or responsibility that I'm doing that may or may not include my calling. And sometimes we maybe just work at an occupation so that we can really do our calling. It might be our avocation, as some people call it. But I think we tend to function as humans best when our calling and occupation are together, when they are synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I am a pastor, I have a calling that I think every follower of Jesus has, is to follow Jesus and to live my life in such a way that I'm increasing the reputation of God in the world, and others are brought to him, led to him because of that. And I can actually live out that calling doing different occupations, but I am serving in the occupation as a senior leader at a church right now. And those two things really meld together well. So they can be separate. Occupation can be a particular job or opportunity, and it might not be your sense of calling, but it provides the means for you to live out your calling.
And is that part of his design? Like I feel, and I'm going at is the first bucket that you just talked about, and I'm with you in that. It's when there's synergy, like what you said, there's synergy between your calling and your occupation. When you are, might I say, some of the lucky few that find that, you kind of fall into the work doesn't feel like work if you're doing what you love bucket. But I would say that the majority of people that I encounter fall into the latter, which is their occupation is just their occupation. And it's either providing them the opportunity to, outside of work, lean into that calling and serve in that calling and put resources into that calling, or live the lifestyle that they want. Is there, in terms of God's design, is there a right or wrong between either of those? Like if someone's in that second bucket, or should they be going, I gotta change my plan and go after the calling? Because that can put a lot of pressure on people.
Right. So here's what I would say is, we go back in history. We are about the second or third generation, probably in history, where people actually could live out their sense of calling and giftedness. Because in history, going back through the agricultural age, the industrial age, most men and some women actually worked at occupations simply to put food on the table and to pay the rent. And there was nothing romantic or seemingly purposeful in what they were doing. And I think maybe Gen Z and millennials, and even my generation, we are living in a unique time in history where we can actually have something that gives us meaning, and we can monetize it, and we can live doing what we would do for free, if we had to. So in my parents' generation and generations before that, you could be a coal miner. Who feels really called to be a coal miner, right? Or, there are all kinds of very difficult things people had to do. And so the question is, how did they find meaning and purpose in those repetitive jobs that weren't exactly like their great longing in life to do? And I think it's possible that many of them did, but it's kind of a new thing for us to go, oh, I want to do what is purposeful and meaningful for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if the opposite of that is if you aren't able, either through spiritual guidance or through your own awareness, if you're not able to make the connection between that job and meaning and purpose, it could turn into bitterness and resentment. I think that's where I've seen certainly a lot of people that are in an occupation where certainly if they are miserable, they could feel less than or inadequate or like something's wrong because they're like, okay, no, I'm just doing this but there is still meaning. There's still meaning and dignity, even if it's outside of your calling. Also, and you might agree with me, looking back at my career, if I can pinpoint some of the jobs that I had where it actually felt like work.
Yes.
I don't think I was in those positions by accident. And that might not have been like, God wasn't saying you're going to be, this is it for you, but it was a part of, I was going to be learning a skill or going through a life experience that was going to serve me when I was in a position or in a season of life where I could be in that calling.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. That very rarely do we actually start out, hey, I've graduated from college, I'm going to the job of my dreams. That rarely happens. So I've been a pastor for almost 45 years, and I've pastored a number of wonderful churches along the way. But I can tell you that the current church where I am pastor is the first church I would have joined if I weren't a pastor and I was just a regular person on the street. I felt called to these other places, and God had me there for a reason, but it took me about 25 plus years to finally be at a church that I would have chosen to attend if I was just someone living in the neighborhood, right? So it took me a number of years to finally get to the church that went, wow, this is what I've always hoped for and dreamed for in my life. So it took a while, but all those other steps along the way, there was joy in them. There was meaning and purpose, but it wasn't ultimately what I had dreamed or imagined for myself.
Do you think that if maybe someone's in the midst of that, maybe there's not a lot of meaning or purpose and they're not quite sure why this season of work life is where it's going to lead, beyond meaning or purpose, do you think there's any value into being able to tie what you're doing to at least a spiritual gift or an opportunity to serve the people that you work with, like other things that can bring dignity and joy to the work other than the connection between a larger meaning?
Right. Sometimes there's some confusion in my own head between a spiritual gift and a natural talent and ability. And I do think sometimes the Spirit uses natural abilities that we already have, but now we're just going to use them for spiritual reasons or purposes. But I do think, in general, I would say that anytime someone is in a job that is contrary to their giftedness, their natural abilities, they are probably going to be really miserable. In fact, there's one job I had when I graduated from college, and my wife was a year behind me. We were already married, and so I had to get a job for a year before I went to seminary. and I got a job working for a publishing company. I won't say where. And I was a telephone salesperson selling books, and books that were kind of out of date a little bit. And they were called spiffs. I don't know what it stands for. But I would cold call bookstores around the country and ask them if they wanted to buy a certain group of these books. And I knew they didn't want to. And so finally, I had to come to the conclusion, I just have to say to myself, if these people buy this set of books, they deserve it. I mean, that's the only thing that I could do to kind of keep my sanity. And I lasted about 3.5 weeks in that job. It just, I was not wired for that, right? So it was not good.
That sounds like a lot of sales position.
Yes.
I don't think I would have,
Yes.
I don't think I would find a lot of joy in that. But there's someone out there that probably.
Yeah. If you're wired for that, that's awesome. In fact, I had a friend who was selling at the same time, and he was making great money, and he loved it. And but we're just wired differently.
Yeah.
Hey, you said something a while ago about, well, if you're not working for your purpose, you become bitter or very disappointed and disillusioned. And I've been doing some reading on that recently. And here's one thing that really stuck out to me is that there was a time back in history, and really for most of human history, that people had a sense that when you were working for the common good. You were working for your community. You were working for your family. What you were doing added value to those around you. But there came a time in Western culture when we got past the feudal system and past royalty, and now we're kind of in Western market capitalism. All of a sudden, we started working for the advancement of ourselves. And we no longer worked for the common good. And so if I'm working only for the advancement of myself, and I'm not liking what I'm doing, or it's not helping me, or it's not making me happy, or I'm not getting ahead financially, I don't like this job, and I'm bitter and I want out. On the other hand, if I'm in a job, if I'm in a coal mine, day in and day out, coming home all sooty, but yet I know that somehow what I am doing is helping fuel the heaters in homes and keeping people warm, I can go back to my job. I might not like it, but do you see the difference? There's a difference between the idea I'm working for the common good and I'm just working for my own self-advancement.
That's bringing, I got my note card handy. It's reminding me of I came across a scripture that says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Jesus to do good works." That's one of the buzzwords. I love like good works,
right?
But and that's exactly what you're saying. It's for the common good.
Yes, for the good of God's kingdom, for the good of my neighborhood, the good of my community. And that's how I really discern if a job is meaningful and helpful in the world today. That is, if you can look, almost every job, you could look at it and say, I am in some way contributing to the common good of my community. You could be in the medical field, you could be in the finance field, you can just about name everything. It may, except maybe a strip joint. I don't know. That's, I
don't think that's God's design.
That's right. And it's probably not for the common good. But so the deal is, most jobs, though, I do think you can say, hey, this is for the common good. And you can trace that through your work. And I think that's what most people did before this present age, that they realized that what they were doing was either feeding their family, it was helping their extended family, or it was adding to their community. And I think that's what God calls each of us to do, to actually work at something that adds value to the human community.
What a great internal grid for someone who's in a season where they're miserable or just uncertain if what they're doing is what they should be doing, to just have a quick moment and ask themselves, am I in a position, am I doing good works. Am I serving the common good, or am I doing this to advance myself?
Right.
And I don't mean like an honest reflection, because I think most human beings would be really quick to say, oh, I'm serving the common good, when in reality, our core motivations kind of teeter
Yeah.
toward the other side.
And we rarely have pure motivation. So normally it's kind of both of those things. When both of those things go together, it's especially good, right? That I'm in a
Mhm.
job that is actually providing for me financially or giving me opportunities. And when those two things come together, it can be, the job that you always dream about along the way. Hey, there's a story that as I was kind of refreshing the notes that you sent about what about you're in a job that you don't really love and you're not for, how do you deal with that? So here's a story. I think it's a good metaphor. If it's not, you can exit out. But about 3 years ago, I was really having bad knee problems, and I was going to my counselor, and I was talking to her about that. That wasn't why I was at the counselor. And she said, "Oh, you're experiencing body betrayal." I went,
Whoa.
"Oh, body betrayal. That's a really good phrase." Yeah, I'm getting to the point where my body is starting to fail me in different ways. And when it does, you have to deal with it. You have to grieve and that kind of thing. And so I came back 2, 3 more times, and she said, "Well, have you finally figured out how to handle your body betrayal?" I went, "No." And in my head, I was going, "That's what I'm paying you for." And then I said, "Well, no, help me." She says, "Well, you deal with body betrayal with body gratitude." And I went to myself, I'm the pastor. I should have known this. But the thing is, I should have been thinking about the things that I could still do with my body and the things that I was still capable of, and get to gratitude in the middle of my body betrayal. So I just started thinking today that when we are in the middle of vocational betrayal or career betrayal, and I'm not where I thought I should be or not where I wanted to be, that maybe instead of becoming bitter and letting that affect everyone around me, what if I could start thinking about vocational gratitude or career gratitude and find something in my current situation that I can truly be grateful for? And here's one thing I've noticed through the years as someone who leads an organization: when people aren't happy in their job, they typically don't do a good job. So they want another one. But the way you get another job is by doing your current job really well. And so when
Yeah.
people do their current job really well, guess what? Hey, I want to give you more to do. And so if people who are in a position or a job that is really not floating their boat and they're really not happy, hey, if you can find some vocational, occupational gratitude where you are and let that reframe the way you're thinking about it, and can become a better worker or server or whatever it is, then that is the way for you to get to the next place. And that next place might be closer to the place that you really want to be.
Yes. And I love that. Vocational betrayal versus vocational gratitude. And it may also help you just merely become more aware of that, what the next opportunity is.
Yes. Right. Yes.
That God's like, hey, come on. It's right here. It's right in front of you. Like sometimes we're so like blinded by that bitterness or that betrayal that we might have the opportunity that we're looking for. We might be 1 degree away from it, but we are so lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that quick reframe puts us in a posture of being a gratitude posture, but also open to new things that might come up.
This is actually a principle that is embedded in the New Testament. In Matthew 25, in the parable of the talents, the master gives 5 talents to one servant, 2 to another, and 1 to another. And the first 2 servants, they double their money, and the master comes back and they go, "Look, master, you gave me 5 talents and I'm giving you 10. And what does the master say? "Well done, good and faithful servant. you have been faithful in a few things. Now I'm going to put you in charge of even greater things. And that is a principle, I think, that translates almost in anything that we do in terms of our vocation or occupation, that when we demonstrate that we are faithful and effective in small things, well, guess what the people above us want to do? They want to give us more responsibility in more things or bigger things.
This is taking my curiosity in another direction too. So we've talked about God. Yes, God designed us to work, but to do good works, to contribute to the good and not for advancing ourselves. But it also seems like we're designed to do hard work.
Yes. Or work hard along the way.
Or work hard.
Yes.
Well, yeah, which was the one.
Yeah.
I don't have them in front of me, but I did find it really interesting, and someone somewhere, maybe ChatGPT could do the math for me, but there are a lot of scriptures where the words for lazy and diligent are in the same scripture.
Oh, wow.
So it could be like sluggard and reward, but like
Right.
the two things go hand in hand. I wish I had one in front of me, but I don't.
It's probably in Proverbs would
Probably
be a good place for that. And so, and I think what it does, I think there's a difference between hard work and working hard. That is, and I think the Proverbs writer was saying, if you're lazy and you're a slacker, you're not working hard. That is, that you're not putting out the effort to do it. Now, there are some things that are just hard to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can do some things that are hard to do, but not necessarily be working hard all the time. But yes, I think we are called to work hard. But I think God is also probably I forget what management called this, kind of management by goals. What was it? Management by objectives. So I do think that that maybe God appreciates that we work hard enough to accomplish whatever objective it is that is in front of us. And then, God did put into our work week a day of rest along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that just dawned on me as I said that. One of the things I was reading in preparation for this message is that work is one of the things that God recognizes that man can do a lot of and do easily. He can work for 6 days and he only needs to rest one. So we are really made to work hard in that way. And we're kind of created for that.
And he tells us work 6 days and then rest one. Now it's like we work 5. That's not enough. Let's work 4. But even then, then you could even take that a step further and say, well, the concept of work doesn't stop at 9 to 5. I mean, I don't know about you, but when you get off work and you go, there's plenty of work to do.
Absolutely,
when you're not working, whether it's, family things, or you're serving, or you're coaching a little league team, or you're, who knows, but you're doing 7 loads of laundry, and, work doesn't really ever stop. And we're actually really bad at stopping and letting ourselves rest. And by we, I mean, Heather, I'm sure I'll be the first one to admit I'm terrible at allowing myself to rest.
As you were saying that, the difference between a highly cluttered house and one that is neat and everything is in the right place?
What?
Work.
Oh boy.
I mean, isn't that right? It's doing the work of straightening up and putting things back, all that kind of stuff. So in reality, the thing that makes life, or actually creates shalom, when everything is in the right place, it takes work to do that. But when you do the work and things are all in the right place, then you experience shalom.
So we've talked about the nature of the work, the kind of work, or God's calling, but where does the people or the environment we're working in come into play in terms of God's design. Maybe this gets into God's design for the workplace, because one could be working even in their calling.
Yeah.
And depending on the work environment or the people, that could pull them into a state of misery, or pull them out of what God is designing for them within that job.
Yes. I mean, so when we think about work, we tend to just automatically think of the actions and the efforts that go into the work. But now in the world in which we live, we are doing those actions and efforts in an organization where there are people perhaps working alongside of us, people working above us, and they are holding us accountable. And as you know, that anytime you have a group of humans together in an organization, it can be a healthy organization, or it can be slightly dysfunctional, or it can be actually toxic. And so I think we are living in a day when, with our focus on mental health, that a lot of people, they're looking for, hey, I want to go to an organization that is healthy, and I might be willing to do something less than what I may be capable of or qualified to do now if I can be a part of a healthy organization. So I don't know that the Bible actually, kind of foresaw in the future how that would work out. But essentially, if you live by the values and the principles that you find in Scripture, you're going to create an orderly and a healthy system that you are in. But you may be in a system where the values of Scripture, the values of loving and caring for people are not there. And then it won't be healthy. And it might not be a very fun place to work. And I think it's at that point where people have to decide, maybe I need to work in a different place.
Yeah. That was leading me to this other question I had written down, was from what biblical wisdom helps us know when to stay, when to go, when to shift. Because I have certainly stayed in unhealthy organizations, and many times it was fruitful because I stayed, and other times maybe that wasn't a very fruitful season, and I could have probably gone on to do something different. But we're all, we're also called to be the light. Sometimes we have an opportunity to influence the environment, but in very unhealthy organizations, there is a limit to that influence.
Right.
And you're right. It's up to your discernment or mentorship or spiritual guidance to know. So I'll go back to that question: biblical wisdom around helping us, how to know when to stay, when to go, or when to shift.
Here's what I would say to that. I would say that we don't grow apart from resistance or opposition, right? The way we build muscle is by doing resistance training, right? And so I do think that one of the ways that that God helps us grow and mature as individuals is to have us in places where there are very needy people, or very cranky people, or very unappreciative people, and somehow learning to live and exist in the middle of that may be the lesson that God wants us to learn at that particular point in time. And so I don't know that I could count or identify a particular verse, but I would say when I've been in those kind of situations, it comes down to a matter of prayer and a matter of sensing what the God's Spirit is saying. Okay, you have learned the lesson, but you're not going to change the way things are going here. Then I release you, and you can go and look for something somewhere else. So just because there's difficulty and opposition relationally, that doesn't mean we should be bailing quickly. The Lord may actually want us to be in that situation for the purpose of others or for the purpose of our own maturity. Mm-hmm. I had a wonderful learning one time in a church I pastored before. We had like a mental health night, and we had a bunch of different classes, and one of the classes was how to deal with unhealthy people, how to deal with difficult people. And so I was walking around going to different classes and looking in. And when I looked into this class, how to handle difficult people, it was all the people at my church that I thought were difficult people.
Oh boy.
And then I went, okay, maybe the blind spot that we all have is that we're all difficult people to somebody, right? So, but it was funny to me that the people who were really, I thought, difficult people to deal with were the ones trying to find out how to deal with difficult people, and they might have been there because of me. I don't.
That's all of them. They came together
Sure.
and they said, we
Yes.
got to figure
Yeah.
out how to work with. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? That, yes, we all could take the class. You're right. Every single one of us is difficult to somebody else.
Yeah.
But that's just an attitude.
Right.
That's an attitude thing and a perspective thing. And usually there might be a difference in values, work styles. Who knows?
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't even have a right to know what's causing the difference between that.
Right. Yeah. The question that you asked me, and I've been reflecting on it, is that when did I become open to moving in my own life? And so for me, primarily it was, so the first church I pastored, it was Sunday morning only. And we had 15 people enrolled in Sunday school. It was a one-room country church in Central Texas. I pastored there for 3 years. I spoke to the same 8 to 15 people every week, and it was wonderful. I have some of my most fond memories from that period. In fact, 2 of my sons are named from people that I met at that church. But the thing was, after a while, I had learned about all I could learn about my profession, about my calling at that place. So then I was open to go to another place. And it was a little bit larger, and it was in more of a town than just a rural place. And I was there for almost 4 years. And at a particular point in time, it was like, okay, I think I'm ready to move on to handle more responsibility. So for me, when I have moved places of ministry, it has always been, okay, I think God is through with me here, but it's like the challenge is not here. I think I've learned all that I can learn here. And so it was time. And so that's kind of been the factor that led me to be open to moving and leaving throughout my career.
Yeah, it's not so much wisdom as a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
experienced that as well. And what you said earlier about prayer is so important. I believe
Right.
when you are wondering if it's time to make a move or to shift, that because I'm sure you've had them too. I have had seasons where I've been questioning that and prayer was involved, but I was being called to stay, like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
Don't go yet.
Yeah.
Hang in there. And I didn't know why. And of course, at the time, you don't know what's just on the other side. You don't know what you're getting ready to learn. But as time goes on, you look back and you go, oh, that's why. That's why. Like, I remember when I left corporate to stay at home with my son, that was a really tough decision. Really tough decision, but I'll never, but one of the first weeks that I was home with him and I was pushing his stroller on a walk. And I was full-time stay-at-home mom. I wasn't even working part-time anymore. And I knew, I was like, the idea for people warriors came to my head.
Yeah.
And I probably have him in my 800 pages of notes apps, but I remember pushing his stroller. He was 2 and speaking this vision of what people warriors would be in my phone. So that, cause that's what I do. You're creative like me. When you have an idea, you got to get it out somewhere. But and I would do that. I would take on walks every single day and I would put these ideas, but something was telling me, like, was not yet. Like, have it, but not yet. Enjoy this season. And I can't really clarify why or what, but it was just this moment of not yet. And I've had so many of those. And then 2 years went by and then you have this moment of like, now. And it is incredibly overwhelming and exciting. Like, have you ever had one of those moments where like maybe the not yet and then the moment of clarity where it's like borderline emotional, like, oh my, okay, God.
Yeah. So there's a wonderful New Testament example of that. In Greek, there are 2 words for time. One is chronos, which means the measurement of time, like your watch is a chronometer. And then there's kairos, which is a word that means the pregnancy of time, that it is time. It is the time is right. And so what you just described was a kairos moment when in the fullness of time, Jesus came, right? So in the fullness of your time, that's when God was ready for you to do that. So that's called a kairos moment. And most of the time we live in chronos moments, but every now and then we get moments that are pregnant with meaning and opportunity, and in the fullness of time, opportunities come, doors are opened, and those are exciting.
They're exciting. When you've had those, are you like me in that it happens and then you're like, okay, but am I really ready? Like, I don't know are you sure? Like now I'm definitely not ready
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, I can see that. I kind of had that moment when my co-pastor here at Preston Trail called and asked me to pray about planting a church with him. This was like in August of 2001. And in that moment, I tell people I lied that I would pray about it, but I had been thinking about these kinds of things. And in that moment that he invited me to do that, I knew this is the time. And so I was ready for it. In fact, I was desperate to go and do something different because I'd lost my inner circle of people. I'd been in a church where we were trying to transition the church to be more outreaching and more effective. And it was just time. And so when that occurred, it was wonderful. It was great. And it's been about 23 years of just God's faithfulness and wonderment. This has been the best season of my ministry. And it happened when they're in a kairos moment like that.
A kairos moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna be waiting all day, every day. I'm like, am I gonna have one today?
In English,
I love that I have something to call it now.
Yeah. You can it's in English. It's Kairos, kairos, a kairos moment.
I want to ask you about a fun debate that came up in our Rooted group. Last fall, my husband and I did Rooted at Preston Trail, and I don't remember which chapter or it was on something on discipleship. But someone asked the question to the group: can you even consider yourself or call yourself a disciple if you don't sell everything, stop working, and just move to a third world country and devote everything you have to a mission? Basically saying like, stop working and just purely serve. Can you still call yourself a disciple? It was a fun debate, and I was shocked at how many different views there were on this. So I'm curious, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Jesus said that in his conversation with the rich young ruler. And so he came to Jesus and asked, what must I do to be complete or whole? And Jesus said, well, you need to keep the law. And then the young man said, well, I've kept all the law from my youth. And he said, I've honored my parents. I don't steal. I don't lie. And so he listed the last 5 commandments. And what he did was he left out the first 4 and 5, which actually deal with God being God in your life and not having an idol. And so what Jesus does in that moment is he recognizes that his wealth and his place is his idol. And so what he says to him in that moment, okay, all you have to do is to sell all you have and give it to the poor and come and follow me. Jesus didn't say that to the disciples, Peter, James, and John. They didn't have to sell their boats and all, Now they did leave them, obviously, to go and do that. But the deal was Jesus just recognized that was that man's idol.
Gotcha.
So you really can't truly follow Jesus if something else is an idol in your life. Because to follow Jesus means that now he is the ultimate decider in every aspect, in every area of your life. And so for a lot of people, even in our day, that money is the ultimate decider. It decides where I live and what I'm going to do, how I'm going to spend my time, all those kinds of things. So I don't think Jesus was saying to everybody, sell all you have and give the poor and come and follow me. But to follow him, you do have to give up whatever your idols are at any given time.
You're right. I do think that was in the idols,
Yeah.
and money and security.
Right.
I think when you frame it as security, it's a
Mm-hmm.
much more difficult conversation to navigate through, or to like get to a place of conviction on,
Yes. Yeah.
because that security is so, I mean, so important. Like
Yes.
money, you feel material even
Yeah.
acknowledging it. So you could easily just dismiss that as, oh, that's not an idol. I don't, money's not an idol for me, but security, that was one, I believe, for me. So
Yeah.
I can be a disciple without
Yes.
selling my home and
But the thing is too, is
living.
there are a lot of people who make that their idol. That is, I know people who are multimillionaires who grew up poor, and they are holding on to their multiple millions of dollars because their idol, their great fear, is the loss of security.
So we've talked about, yes, God designed us to work, to labor, to have occupations, but to contribute to the good, not advance ourselves, to do good works. We also talked about the environment, about how maybe the environment we're called to work in, or through, and how whether even if it's an unhealthy culture, it could potentially be a part. I love that we talked a lot about prayer as something to lean into when you aren't sure if it's a time to stay or go. I love that. So thinking back, so we talked about this already, but there's three buckets. At least I think there's about three buckets people fall into. It's the people whose work aligns, like we talked, there's synergy between the calling and their occupation. There's people who don't enjoy their work, but it's providing them to do things in their lifestyle that's towards their calling. And then there's just some people who haven't even found their calling and are just working to survive and thrive. Or not even to thrive. They're just working to survive. So what words of encouragement would you provide, or can the Bible provide, for people maybe who fall into those last two, who are still like, I've listened to all of this and they're like, okay, yeah, but work still is miserable for me. What do I do here?
Um, that's a very good question. There are several answers, I think, about that. I think I hit on one of those. Is if you are in a job that's not connected to your best gifts and what you can really bring to the table, in my mind, I would be searching for another job. It might be a lower level. It might be a sideways move in terms financially. But I don't think that people will ultimately be happy if they are in a job occupation that does not use at least some of their natural abilities. Because here's the thing, if you're not naturally cut out for it, you're not going to do it very well, and you're not going to get praise and affirmation for the job you're doing. You're going to get criticism and 3-month
Sure.
programs, PPOs. And so, but if you're doing an occupation, it may not be the ultimate one you want, but if it is utilizing some of your natural abilities and gifts, then I would say stay in that, do it well, become irreplaceable to the person you're working for, and see if they will not promote you and give you another opportunity because you've been so faithful. But if you're not wired for that particular job, I would be looking for another one in that
Mm-hmm.
regard. As I think the second bucket was, you're doing okay, but you're just not really linked up with your purpose yet. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
second bucket? I would just say that's the thing where you just uh, keep doing well, but recognizing my whole life is not in this moment. And so I'm going to take advantage of this moment where I am and do the best I can and learn everything that I need to learn from this particular opportunity. And then when another opportunity comes, I will be ready and prepared. I will have matured through this experience, and I will be ready emotionally and perhaps even occupationally for the next one that comes. So I think it's the bottom one. If you're not cut out for it, or you don't have gifts that match it, I would be looking for another job that is more in line with natural abilities. Second bucket, I would say, hey, be faithful where you are, grow where you are, and then allow God to work in that next opportunity for you.
That's wonderful. All right, I want to end with I intentionally didn't send you these because I love to hear people's gut answers, but it's been really fun
Okay.
ending
Yes.
these episodes in just a fun human moment to allow the listeners or viewers, if this ever is a video, to get a little bit of a snapshot into Jim outside of pastoral conversations.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask you quick questions and
Okay.
whatever comes to mind first. What's your go-to comfort meal after a long day?
When I'm not trying to keep my girlish figure, it would be
Comfort
chicken.
meal.
Yeah, chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, and green beans from Babes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
If you could instantly become an expert in anything other than theology, what would it be?
I would love to be a well-trained, very effective courtroom attorney.
Wow. Wow, that surprises me because I know you're creative like me and usually creative and learn. I love that answer. Okay, what's a movie you've watched more times than you like to admit?
Um, Princess Bride.
Nice.
Yes. In fact, my whole family, we can basically quote most of the dialogue. Yes.
I love it. If the church gave you a sabbatical and a backpack, where would you go? What would you do?
Funny you say that because I just did that. I just spent 2 weeks on the Camino de Portuguese in Portugal and Spain, and it was a 2-week walk, 170 miles to Santiago de Compostela, where St. James' bones are supposedly buried at the cathedral there.
Wow.
So I did that with another guy, and we walked an average of 17 miles a day. 5 days on, we rested a day, then walked 5 more. And it was an amazing experience. We stayed in Airbnbs in the evenings, but we had to walk our 17 miles plus or minus to get there. And it was
Wow.
an amazing experience and journey.
What brand of shoes did you go with for something like that?
I went with the wrong pair of shoes. I was wearing Hoka's, but they were too big. And so halfway through, after I had multiple blisters, I bought another pair of Hoka's and I got through it. But, I was doing well. It was really funny. I was only thinking about 170 miles kind of in ethereally. And right before I left, some guy said to me, that's like you walking from here to Abilene. And I went, oh my gosh. So, so anyway, it was
Wow.
awesome. It was one of the hardest things I've done since I played Friday night Texas high school football, but it was a great experience.
And what a great opportunity to practice the body gratitude when you're feeling a lot of body
Absolutely, yeah.
betrayal.
And there are different spiritual practices, but pilgrimage is a spiritual practice. The Jews did that. They would Psalm 124 to Psalm 134 are called the Psalms of Ascent, and that's what they would read on their way up to Jerusalem. And so this has a long tradition in Christian life, and so I did it, and it was a wonderful experience.
If you had to pick a walk-on song every time you stepped on stage to preach, what would it be?
Oh man, you're killing me. Gosh. Can I take a pass? I can't think of a
Yes,
walk-up
you
song.
can. You're gonna think of one the moment we hit
I know
stop.
as soon as because I listen to Christian music, and so Christian music is not really designed for a walk-up song focusing on the person, right? So,
Sure.
uh,
That's okay. No, you can totally take a pass.
I'll take a pass.
2 more. What's something people would be surprised to learn about you?
I think they would be surprised to learn that I don't do a lot of normal uh, celebrational stuff, really creative stuff at home. But my philosophy of life is to make the most of every day in the ordinary. And so, like when I was really busy at a previous church, like I always did the mornings with my kids. So I tried to do something every day to demonstrate my love for my kids. So I didn't neglect them and go, hey, we're going to do a big thing today. It was like I tried to be faithful every day in ordinary ways.
Make the most of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write that down and look at it every day now that it's summer as a mom.
Yeah, there
Because
you go.
man, every day you're like, what's the thing we're gonna do? What are we gonna go do
Yeah,
to entertain you? And it's like, hey, no, maybe today, maybe just be in the ordinary,
that's right.
playing Legos,
Yes,
making grilled cheeses,
and be engaged in it.
and
Yeah,
be engaged.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this was super fun. I'm going to be practicing body and vocational gratitude. Still thinking about the difference between wilderness or
Yeah,
the difference between wilderness and modern society is work.
yeah, and civilization.
Um,
Yeah,
Man, my greatest prayer is that even one person who is experiencing one of those second buckets listening and just finds shalom, right? That
yeah,
peace that passes understanding, that, hey, you know what? Here's what I can do if I'm not satisfied with my current situation, or you know what? They got a little bit of clarity to help them stay or make a
yeah,
decision. So thank
yeah.
you.
You
Thanks for your
bet.
time.